Albany, I have no idea if you guys can hear me. I know that you can see my slides, so I'm waiting to get that camera adjusted back around to the classroom. But in the meantime, I want to ask Savannah and Augusta if you guys are able to hear me. Can you please wave or give a thumbs up? Thank you, Savannah. Augusta, are you able to? Thank you. All right. Yeah, for Albany, okay, I see that you guys are turning up the volume. There we go. All right. Can you guys hear me in Albany? Can you wave? Give a thumbs up. All right. Great. All right, and good afternoon, Athens. So today we are going to go through one of the most important and fundamental resources that you guys are going to take away from this class this semester. It is most likely in your future practice sites that of all the things that we're going to talk about, the resources today are those that you're going to carry with you and actually utilize. And I just know that from students, reaching out and emailing me and talking to me after this class and saying, I use this and here's why and here's what it was for. So we're going to go through a couple of pharmacogenomic databases. We'll also have a quiz on the use of them at the end of class. Of course, that will be open computer, open resource, open everything. Are there housekeeping items or questions from previous classes that we need to cover before we get going? All right, distance sites, feel free to chime in with questions if you have them. So just a couple of slides. We're going to spend most of our time working on questions and utilizing these databases for various reasons. So let's start off talking about Pharm-GKB. So Pharm-GKB looks like this. So if you go to the website, they re-updated it last year. So if you've looked at it prior to then, looks very different now. Looks a lot cleaner, gives information about the drugs, pathways, dosing guidelines, drug labels. So we'll go through more of this in a moment. Pharm-GKB is abbreviated for Pharmacogenomics Knowledge Base Resource. This encompasses clinical information, include dosing guidelines, drug labels, potentially clinically actionable drug-gene associations and genotype-phenotype relationships. Pharm-GKB collects, curates, and disseminates knowledge about the impact of human genetic variation on drug responses through the following activities. They annotate genetic variants and gene-drug disease relationships. Pharm-GKB summarizes important pharmacogenomic genes, associations between genetic variants and drugs, and drug pathways. It also curates FDA drug labels containing pharmacogenomic information, enables consortia examining important questions in pharmacogenomics, curates and participates in writing pharmacogenomic-based drug dosing guidelines, and contributes to clinical implementation projects for pharmacogenomics through collaborations. They also publish pharmacogenomic-based drug dosing guidelines, very important pharmacogene summaries, and drug-centered pathways. And so if we look at different types of databases to utilize, the Pharm-GKB gives genotype and phenotype data related to drug response. Now there are other websites that you've probably used from the federal government that include SNPs and frequencies, genotype, phenotypes, human genes and genetic disorders, and so forth. But this is the one that's very oriented towards pharmacy and pharmacy practice. Okay, so before we move on with the next section, what I want to do is go to this website and just very briefly take a tour of the homepage. And the reason why I'm doing this is because shortly you guys will be using this. So one of the most important things, one of the things I use if I'm sort of rushed or if I'm using this really quickly and I just want to get to my information, put whatever I want into this search tool. Know what you're looking for, search here for medications, genes, particular genetic variant, and see all the information on that term. So this is sort of just a fast, quick way to get to where you need. However, the more comfortable and more familiar you become with this website, you might be a little bit more sophisticated in knowing exactly where you want to get to in order to get the information you're looking for. So for example, if you want to find out more about pharmacogenomics, the study of the relationship between genetic variants and how the body responds to medications, you can go there. If you want to know more about pharmacogenomics and PharmGKB, you can click here, sort of where this sort of dot diagram is, learn more about PharmGKB in general. But at the top of the website, you have drugs and pathways, dosing guidelines, and drug labels, and these are updated pretty regularly. So you can use these boxes and click on different things if you want to browse content on these various items. Medications, pathways, and here they have illustrations. Now the illustrations, you'll note, use the same sort of color, same font, same formatting, so you kind of get used to seeing them. And I don't necessarily think they're the prettiest, but they are always readily available, and these illustrations are showing how important drugs are broken down or how they work, metabolism, pathways, dosing guidelines on how to adjust the medication based on genetic information, or drug labels from the US and abroad that contain pharmacogenetic information. You can also browse reviews on genes important to pharmacogenomics. So these are the VIPs, or the very important pharmacogenes. Now this phrasing might sound familiar, so I've used this before on slides showing you guys contents for very important pharmacogenes, and this is exactly where I get this type of information from to know which genes fall underneath that category. Clinical annotations, variant annotations, or you can check out the latest news, have information here, details, answers, and so forth. Okay, so this is the PharmGKB website. So the quiz that I have today, once I give you the password to open up that quiz, this is the website that you're going to use to answer those questions. I do have the quiz on autograde, so I hope that's going to be okay for the computer to go ahead and grade it and post those. But if there is an issue, just bring it to my attention and we will check it out. All right, the next website that I want to introduce is called CPIC. CPIC is very similar to PharmGKB. I don't necessarily understand why they don't merge again. They started out as the same thing, and then they became two different entities. So CPIC, you may find a little bit more resourceful. You're not going to need this website right away for the quiz, and I'll explain in a moment why that is. So for CPIC, this is the Clinical Pharmacogenetics Implementation Consortium. Here the guidelines are peer-reviewed and they are published in Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics with simultaneous posting to PharmGKB. CPIC's goal is to address some of the barriers to implementation of pharmacogenetic tests into clinical practice. And one barrier to implementation of pharmacogenetics is the lack of freely available, peer-reviewed, updatable, and detailed gene-drug clinical practice guidelines. So CPIC provides guidelines that enable the translation of genetic laboratory test results into actionable prescribing decisions for specific drugs. So these guidelines can center on genes or around particular drugs. Priority is given to genome typing tests that are already offered in CLIA-approved clinical settings. So this is a certain designation that laboratories have to meet certain guidelines and thresholds and review and certification in order to be able to run these types of tests for medical health information. Okay, so before we get to that, I'm going to show a very brief video. I think it's about 3 minutes on CPIC and PharmGKB to give a little bit more information about what it is and sort of to iterate what I just explained. or not. I've changed every setting here, and sound is not coming through. So therefore, even on here, mic volume control is not possible with current wiring. Okay. Well, in lieu of that, I can post that to the content, the homepage for the class. And just go through the assignment. So the assignment is in two parts. One will be, I call it a quiz, but sort of an in-class assignment. And then the other is an out-of-class assignment. Given the amount of time left in the class, it's possible that you can just get through both of those things during the time. So why is one an out-of-class assignment? So what we found last year is that Pharmacogenomics can handle 100 different IP addresses or computers hitting the website at the same time. For CPIC, every time that we tried to have an in-class exercise utilizing CPIC, we would crash the website. It doesn't seem to be able to handle that amount of traffic. If they had changed that, then great, we can all get to CPIC and do the assignment. If they haven't changed it, then that's a problem. So we want to use this time to familiarize the students with Pharmacogenomics resources, as well as familiarizing everybody with CPIC on the clinical guidelines. So these databases are going to be critical for the application of pharmacogenomics into clinical practice. I want to make sure that you have confidence using them. This is the kind of information that I can't put on an exam. If I could, I would, but in order to put it on an exam, I would have to give you free and open access to these databases that would help you answer the other questions, and so it's a little challenging. So that's why I like to do these as activities. So in order to determine whether or not we're going to crash the CPIC website, I want to just introduce this first of all. And I said on Tuesday that we would finish up talking about statin metabolism and answer a question about SLC01B1. So when I'm on CPIC, if I want to look at the clinical guidelines for a particular drug gene pair, what I typically do is I'll go to genes and drugs. And then when I'm here, it's going to give me a lot of information. This is the kind of information, and this is where you're going to need to be to answer a lot of the questions that I have posed. You can alphabetize these. Right now, they're alphabetized by drug. So I'm going to go ahead and click on gene and alphabetize this. So now that I've done that, then I'm going to go search for SLC01B1. Okay, now I found SLC01B1. And not surprising, I see a number of statins here. Rosuvastatin, Sorvastatin, Simvastatin. So this is the drug gene pair that we talked about on Tuesday. And the question is whether or not to test patients or to not test patients for that specific RSID reference sequence and that genotype, whether they're CC or TC or TT. And so what we see is that there is a guideline, high confidence, so A and 1A in terms of, go back up here, the guideline is CPIC level and the Pharmacogenomics level of evidence. And then we want to look at the FDA label, so what the advisement is. So the advisement here is that there is information on this drug gene pair. But information is what it sounds like. So there is no testing requirement that we have to do before the patients receive a prescription for simvastatin. So whether they're CC, CT, or TT, we won't really know unless they have a major myopathy. If they're taking the medication, then we might be able to go back and look, but it's going to depend on a lot of factors. There is testing that CLIA certified laboratories can do, but in this case, it's not required. Now, there are other genes where testing is recommended, or there's something actionable there. And then there are also, here's one. There are also scenarios where testing is required, but with SLC 1B1 and simvastatin, that's not the case. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to open up the quiz and allow you guys to work on it. I'm happy to let you guys work in groups. That is fine with me if you would like to work in groups. I think that's going to be important to make sure that you understand where and how to find this information. But please do your own work, make sure that you understand how to use these resources, and you're going to turn in your own quizzes. It's not like a group sort of assignment or a group activity. All right, so with that, I will open up the quiz. And then, in addition, there are two parts to this assignment. So this is Pharmacogenomics is the passcode. Why is that not focusing? Pharmacogenomics is the passcode for the quiz. And then I will just unblind the homework assignment. But again, I'm not sure whether everybody in this room and at our distance sites is going to be able to hit the CPIC website at the same time. If we can, then great, and go ahead and do that and turn that in. And that's all we're going to do today. Is just work on that and make sure that we understand how to use these resources. Questions? GKB, I'm not sure why it's not focusing very well.
Capital P, capital GKB. Yes. No, like capital P, the rest is lowercase, GKB. Yeah. There you go. You do the last 7.
Oh my god, they want me to start at 7.
Start at 14.
And work my way back.
Yeah.
I'll start on 15.